So welcome to Low Key Portuguese. Today we're going to look at a couple of pages, or I'm not sure how many pages we'll get through in this video, but we're going to look at some elements that I have in this book that I've put together. It's really an agenda, a personal agenda that doubles as a language tool. If you're interested in it, I haven't published this yet. I haven't put this out yet. It's just something that I work with my students, that I used to work with my students, my one-to-one students. And if you think it'd be helpful to you, let me know in the comments, and I'll figure out a way to have this published, or whether in hard copy format or in a PDF that you can download. Yeah, just let me know. But anyway, so in this book, I try to kind of give you my personal experience as a Portuguese in English dual speaker, someone who has lived in both countries. I moved to Portugal when I was 15 years old, and was forced, not forced isn't the right term, but I was dropped into a situation where my English was not, my Portuguese was not at the level of my peers. I was not in a place where the Portuguese that I had learned in Portuguese school, I had gone to a local Portuguese institute for immigrants and families of immigrants who were trying to maintain a connection to Portugal. My parents enrolled me in this school, and I'd go a couple nights a week for a couple of hours each night. And I learned a lot. I've talked about this in some of my other videos. My most recent video discussing friendships, I definitely bring this up. But anyway, I just didn't have everything that I needed to jump into Portuguese culture and society and just be able to seamlessly blend in. So I had a little bit of struggles with that. And eventually I got to a point where my brain flipped, my thinking flipped from English to Portuguese. And that's when I knew that I had attained a level of fluency and accuracy in my Portuguese speech that allowed me to just, again, at that point, seamlessly interact with people. Now, I never had any real moments of, never any true moments of misunderstanding or anything like that. It was just that feeling within myself that I wasn't quite equal to my peers in how I approached Portuguese. So in thinking along those lines, I tried to put together a workbook of sorts, but it's really, again, it's an agenda that you can use to help you work through just day-to-day common modes of thinking. That's what I want you to take from this, is that I hope that this and from the students that have worked with this, they've told me that it's helped them get to a point where they're starting to think through their day-to-day lives in Portuguese. So what you're seeing here on screen now is just a list of the different terms that are definitely going to come up in this book. It's a glossary that you'll have to always go back to and find the meaning of any term that's used in this book. And I tried to use a lot of cognates, a lot of words that already kind of feel similar to you in your native. If it's English, that's what I'm thinking of. But the same thing applies if you're coming from another language, like especially a Romance language. There are going to be definite terms that look and feel like something that you'll recognize. But anyway, so that's what you see here on screen. But I want to get to this first page here. And it's not typically where your European Portuguese textbooks are going to start in terms of grammar. This is not really a grammar book. It's a everyday living situational Portuguese book. So I'm trying to go about this from the perspective of somebody that isn't, into linguistics. They just want to be able to communicate and think about their lives in Portuguese, just as I said there, in Portuguese rather than English. And an agenda is typically going to, offer you opportunities or provide you with opportunities to plan out your day, to plan out your weeks, to plan out your year, or whatever time frame you're thinking of. But again, that's not really something that you're learning day one in a Portuguese class. You're typically learning "Olá, bom dia," those greetings and niceties. But this isn't for that. This isn't really for speech. It's more for thinking. And my hope, and again, in my experience, this is helping people navigate those daily interactions with themselves and starting to think in Portuguese, because I think that will then blend its way into speech and just general interaction with others. So in this particular book, the first thing that I start off with is the verb to go. Because we often think about what we're going to do. And just as in English, again, I'm trying to use things that are familiar to concepts and structures, linguistic structures that are similar to English, so that you can make that bridge. You can bridge the one language to the other perhaps a little bit more easily. And we do the exact same thing in English with the verb to go. We conjugate the verb to go. I go, you go, or I'm going. You're going, we're going, they're going to do something. So my hope, and I'm pretty confident in this, is that this is something that you'll be able to pick up pretty seamlessly, because it's just the verb to go. And then you're attaching a number of, hundreds of possible infinitives or verbs, actions that don't necessarily need a subject to convey the idea of that action. So the example that I have here, again, is first the conjugation of the verb to go. And we'll start there and just kind of follow along with me if you need to pause and repeat. But ultimately, I want to give you these conjugations, these different subjects performing this action. And we'll start with the word with I. Eu vou. Eu vou. Right? That means I go. Or when we're thinking in terms of what we're going to do, it means I'm going. Eu vou. Tu vais. Tu vais. Tu vais. Remember, tu is our informal you. And then we have ele, ela, he and she, and that shares a conjugation with our formal second person, okay? Você. So, ele, ela, você vai. Okay? Ele vai, ela vai, você vai. Then we have nós, we, nós vamos, okay? Nós vamos. Then we have our third person plurals, eles, elas, they masculine mixed, eles, they feminine, elas, and then vocês is our plural you, y'all, yous guys, vocês, eles, elas, vão. Okay, that's our conjugation of the verb ir in that third person, and really all of them, one more time. Eu vou, tu vais, ele vai, ela vai, você vai, nós vamos, eles vão, elas vão, vocês vão. And then is the whole point of this video here is to show you how we can use the verb to go, id. Again, this is our infinitive, id. It's an irregular verb, id, to go. But when we conjugate it and then attach an infinitive, another action to it, now we can say what we're going to do. Okay, what the subject is going to do. In this first one, eu vou alcançar os meus objetivos. And I tried to, again, use some cognates. So we know that eu is I. Eu vou is I'm going, or I go. But when we're thinking about near future, using id to talk about near future events, it's I'm going, just as we say in English. I'm going to do something. In this case, alcançar means to achieve. So, alcançar os meus objetivos. Objetivos looks very similar, right? Looks like objectives. I'm going to achieve my goals. I'm going to achieve my objectives. That's how you would express this idea. And this applies to really any infinitive. And again, infinitives are just simply actions or verbs without a subject. Abstract ideas. Here's a quick list to get started. And these are all in the realm of things in the realm of growth and development. Okay. And as we go through here, I'm just going to go through one time to give you the pronunciation. You can stop and practice after each one. But I'll start off with the first one here. Alcançar. To achieve, alcançar. To learn, aprender. Eu vou aprender. To grow, crescer. Okay, that SC there, it's got that sh, SH sound. Eu vou crescer. Eu vou crescer. I'm going to grow. I'm going to improve. Eu vou melhorar. Melhorar. Okay, that LH sound is very particular to Portuguese. That L. Eu vou melhorar. Eu vou dominar. To master. Eu vou dominar. And then we can fill in the rest later, but these are just getting you starting to think about how this construction works. I'm going to develop. Eu vou desenvolver. Desenvolver. Okay? Eu vou conquistar. Eu vou conquistar, right? That looks a lot like conquer. Eu vou conquistar. And what you're noticing is, what you should notice at this point, is that infinitives typically, if not all of them do, end in AR, ER, or IR. And there's one or two OR verbs, but we don't really need to worry about those in this context. But back to our terms here. Another one that's a nice cognate. Eu vou evoluir. Eu vou evoluir. Eu vou transformar. Eu vou transformar. Eu vou superar. Vou superar. To overcome. Eu vou descobrir. Okay? Eu vou descobrir. If I'm going to innovate, eu vou inovar. Eu vou inovar. I'm going to succeed. Eu vou ter sucesso. If you notice, here's a dual verb plus noun here, to have success. I'm going to have success is really the exact translation. There's a term for succeed, but it's more in the idea of like to succeed, to follow something. But in this case, if you wanted to give this idea of success, if I'm going to have success, I'm going to succeed, eu vou ter sucesso. Ter sucesso. So you have the infinitive here of the verb have, ter. Okay. To accomplish, eu vou realizar. Eu vou realizar. To inspire, eu vou inspirar. Vou inspirar. To change, eu vou mudar. Eu vou mudar. Okay? To balance, eu vou equilibrar. Eu vou equilibrar. To reflect, eu vou refletir. This one's tough because it's got that guttural R, right? Eu vou refletir. Refletir. But cognate-wise, it looks very similar to reflect. To foster, eu vou fomentar. Vou fomentar. To challenge, eu vou desafiar. Eu vou desafiar. To cultivate, eu vou cultivar. Eu vou cultivar. To commit, eu vou comprometer. Eu vou comprometer. To persevere, eu vou persistir. Eu vou persistir. To dedicate, another nice cognate here, eu vou dedicar. Vou dedicar. To contribute, another cognate, eu vou contribuir. Vou contribuir. To impact, vou impactar. Vou impactar. Now, to live has a few different translations, but I tried to do it in the sense of to live life, right? Not to live as in inhabit, because for what we're doing here, when you see the following page, it's more about things that we're going to do to better ourselves, things that we're going to improve upon. A lot of the verbs here are in that realm, right, of this idea of personal growth and well-being. So if we want to think about life in that sense, of living in that sense, eu vou viver. Eu vou viver. To focus, another nice cognate, eu vou focar. Eu vou focar. To adapt, eu vou adaptar. Eu vou adaptar. E finally, to create, eu vou criar. Okay? Eu vou criar. So I hope this list gives you a sense of, there are lots of words in Portuguese that you probably already know them. You may not know how to pronounce them. You may not have a good handle on where syllables lie, where the pronunciation changes within the word. But nonetheless, in terms of looking at the word, you can have your brain can formulate an idea and proceed from there, and try from that point on, try to understand the pronunciation and the various ways in which these can be used. But again, just going back to our goal here with this video is to talk about this construction of id plus infinitive. Okay, the verb id, to go, plus infinitive. And I tried to give you an example with each one of these, that we simply keep these as is, and we add that construction, the correct conjugation, depending on who's doing these actions, who's going to do these things, which subject is going to do these things. And I presume that somebody working with this agenda would be thinking about themselves, and maybe this first person plural, the we, are going to do. So eu vou is definitely something you want to be able to take in, but just by knowing this one is going to help you with other verbs, because that first person, this ou conjugation, this ending here, you're going to see it with other irregular verbs. For example, the verb to be, eu sou, I am, and then our transient to be, eu estou. Those all have this similar, if the same exact ending there. Just going a little bit further, on the following page, you have this kind of worksheet, if you want to call it that, but it's really just this idea of presenting you with more cognates, time frames. The word ano means year, the word mês means month, and then frase motivadora kind of looks like motivational, right? Phrase. So frase motivadora would be a motivational phrase. And you can write that in English first, and then eventually get to a point where you start translating that or transcribing and thinking in Portuguese. But we're not there yet. So at this point, we just want to put our objectives in. You simply use the elements on the previous page to start constructing these ideas of what your objectives are, whether they're in the realm of learning the language or other objectives you may have in your life. And then cumprir até is this idea of when you're going to accomplish this by. Cumprir is to accomplish or to meet a goal, and até is this idea of by, right? By when are we going to get these things done? So this is the first of many pages in this agenda. I hope it's somewhat helpful to you. I hope this video is just helpful to you, even if you don't care about the agenda, to think through this idea of infinitive attached to the verb, the conjugated form of the verb id, to allow you to start thinking about things that you're going to do in the near future or even just in the future time frame. Okay, I hope that helps. Leave me a comment below in the comments section if you have any questions, if you'd like to learn more, if you're interested in this agenda, and I'll get back to you. Até a próxima.